I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what I've been reading lately. I've discovered Mickey Spillane. I was taking a online course with Dean Wesley Smith. You're going to hear me talk a lot about him on this channel. And it was a video on depth, how to get readers down into a novel through using a lot of descriptions, that sort of thing. And one of the examples he used was the opening to a Mickey Spillane book. I believe it was One Lonely Night. And then just kind of got me interested, and so I picked up a book and started reading it. And I don't know why, but I'm kind of really addicted to these books. If you're not familiar with Mickey Spillane, he was I think he's dead now. He wrote a lot of what we call hard-boiled crime fiction. Mainly his character was Mike Hammer, and so all these are Mike Hammer novels. They came out in the mid 40s to early 50s. Apparently, Mickey Spillane did not really invent this genre. I think Raymond Chandler and a lot of his Philip Marlowe books was actually probably the originators of a lot of these. But Mickey Spillane kind of like took it to the next level. He has a lot more descriptions of violence in there. There's sex. Probably very risque books for when they came out. Now they're totally tame by today's standards. Hardly even count as like erotica by compared to what people are putting out today. But back then, it was Mickey Spillane having sex and ripping clothes off of women, and they just passionately love it. Mike Hammer describing punching someone and like their teeth come jutting out of their lip, or they barf all over themselves because he gets punched in the gut. And it's much more visceral and raw, but also the context of the stories too. I mean, this was coming out in the late 40s, early 50s. If you watch some of the movies that were out back then, they seem very tame, very boring. Watch I Love Lucy, and Mickey Spillane. He's writing about prostitutes caught up in prostitution rings and pimps running the streets, and drug addicts and drug dealers and corrupt politicians and corrupt businessmen. And he really gives a much more seamy side of life. A lot of the books from this genre, both Mickey Spillane's books and Raymond Chandler's books, were turned into movies. And if you're familiar with the old film noir movies, then these were usually based on these books or books like them. And the covers were very lurid, usually showing some woman at some stage of undress or hinting that she's naked. The men all wore of course suits and hats, very stylish of the times, and that sort of thing. And I think the titles of the books were also very very personal. First of all, these were all written in first person stories, and so even the titles were first person. I think the first book was called I the Jury. It's the We the Jury, I the Jury. The next book was My Gun is Quick. I think the third book was Vengeance is Mine. So it's all very me. The books are written in first person, so you get Mike Hammer's voice throughout the whole book. One of the things that I think is interesting, this is from a writing perspective, is that one of the issues that people have when they write first person is how do you describe the character? Because most people don't describe themselves. I'm just telling you a story. I just tell you a story. Maybe I allude to like, oh, I was doing this, and so it was cold out, so I put on a jacket, or I was going to break into a building, and so I wore a lot of dark clothing. So I might talk about like what I'm wearing and what I'm doing, but it's not really in our inclination to describe ourselves. And so first person storytellers often have this problem of how do you tell the reader what the character looks like in a way that doesn't feel unnatural. Mickey Spillane gets around this by just not. He just doesn't describe the character. Mike Hammer describes himself as a big guy and kind of ugly and rough around the edges and that sort of thing. But I don't know if he has blonde hair or brown hair or what colors his eyes are. He says he's a big guy. I assume he's probably 6 foot, but he actually never really says. Um, and so I don't even know what race he is. I mean, just given the context of the time period, he's probably a white dude, but there's nothing in there that would suggest otherwise. Um, and so it's kind of interesting how he gets around that. I think probably one of the faults of the book, if I have one that I would say is a fault, is they're very much a product of their time. And this window of time from the 30s to maybe sometime in the 50s. I think there were books even written into the 60s, but they changed the tone and how they worked, and it probably didn't feel quite right. I haven't read any of the later books yet, but they're very much a product of their time. He uses a lot of slang from that time period. Sometimes I really don't know what he's saying because he's using a slang that I've never heard before. And without any context, I don't know really what he's saying. Even the stories are product of their times. I think like a lot of his descriptions of corruption probably would have felt very, I don't know, exciting or lurid in those day and times. But today we just kind of know politicians are corrupt. We know there's a lot of dirty cops. We know drug dealers get away with a lot of things. That's just kind of how we are and how we think. Certainly a lot of the descriptions of women and that sort of thing are a product of that time period. Every woman is beautiful. Every woman falls madly in love with Mike Hammer as soon as she meets him. It's almost silly by modern day readers, and I'm planning on working on a mystery novel that's sort of a hard-boiled mystery novel, and that's probably not something I want to put in because it's just it seems a little forced and silly by today's standards. But back then, that was part of the appeal, was in a day where pornography of any sort wasn't really available. Having Mickey Spillane describe passionate lovemaking, even in the most tame circumstances, was very sort of titillating back then. And today it just seems kind of naive. But anyway, I definitely recommend these books. Like I said, you have to read them with the mindset of someone who is in the 1940s, the 1950s, and I think you'll really enjoy it. But I think that's an aspect of reading any of the classics, especially science fiction, horror, crime novels, these sort of genre fictions. You have to kind of go back in the time and say, okay, what would they have thought of these sort of stories back then? Because it'll seem cliche today, but that's because we rip these people off. It's true with like a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies. If you've never seen an Alfred Hitchcock movie and you watch one, you kind of don't get what the big deal is, but you have to go back into time and remember what it was like to see this movie for the very first time. Psycho is still an amazing movie, but it's been borrowed from so much that it's just not all that interesting, exciting. But 1962, 63, whenever it came out, no one had seen anything like this. It's a lot like Exorcist. Exorcist, when it came out in the 70s, early 70s, blew everyone's mind away. It's still a really good, really powerful movie, but it's been ripped off so many times that you're probably not going to be all that impressed by it the first time you see it. But I definitely suggest looking into some Mickey Spillane, grabbing certainly. I think of the 2 books that I read of his so far, I think I liked My Gun is Quick better. Although the mystery in Eye of the Jury seemed a little more like a real mystery, like you're really trying to figure out what was going on. Whereas My Gun is Quick, you kind of already knew what was going on, but maybe that's just because his books have been borrowed so heavily from so much. But anyway, I will talk to you later more about, I think probably the next videos will be about character development and how to use psychological tools to develop characters. Anyway, talk to you later. Bye.